Hi everyone, I'm Oriana. I'm one of the consultants at Bailey and French, and I also have a psychology background similar to Dane, but I'm just a bit envious of his experience in the space because, mine is not that long yet. I've been working in HR before, and now I'm kind of designing workshops and kind of doing the solutions that we provide.
It's great to have you here, Oriana, and everybody. You're in safe hands, two psychologists. What could go wrong? So let's start with some housekeeping first. So we've got quite a few of you online. So rather than using breakout rooms or discussion groups, we're going to use the question box for communication, not the chat function. So what that means is you can type something to us, but others won't see your comments. We will read out to the group your questions or comments unless you put a note on there to say don't read that out if it's private. But please, if you do have questions, please ask as we go along. And we have about 45 minutes together today, so we'll remain online at the end of the session too. Again, so if you've got any last minute questions or comments, you'll have the opportunity to ask us then. So let's get started. Organizational change and transformation. It's always been a reality and challenge for the workplace, even before we consider the impact really of the significant events over the past few years, which have only served to further increase the pace, pressure, and disruption that we've all faced due to change. So what we want to take some time today to think about is how can we thrive during these times of change? Well, there are, of course, many processes, perspectives, and approaches to consider when navigating through change. We know it's important to understand the forces that drive change, such as thinking about internal pressures. That may be new leadership or a change of business objectives, perhaps external pressures such as new technologies or industry marketplace changes. Perhaps both are driving the change. We also know that tight change management processes are needed. That's a focus on preparation, implementation, and follow through. These are all really, really important, but that's not actually what we're focusing on today, these strategic or operational aspects. Today, we want to explore the human element in this process. We believe at Bailey and French, the human element is so important. It's how we show up, how we build connections with the people around us, collaborate as a team and work together. So how can we manage and lead change from a more human perspective? How can we and those around us avoid feeling lost in the midst of change? And what is actually the impact of not paying attention to this key and so important aspect? Well, I'm going to hand over to Oriana, who will explore this a little bit more and take us through on a bit of a journey of change. Oriana, if you'd like to take it away.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Dane. Obviously, I think the statistics has kind of dominated the literature over the past 50 years almost, and it's quite daunting, isn't it? We kind of have yet a way to successfully lead through changes, to deliver results that work for people and organizations. And on average, a company has 5 major firm-wide changes in the past 3 years, and nearly 75% of companies expect to multiply the types of major change initiatives they will undertake in the next 3 years as well. So there's a lot of, we're coming from a period of lots of changes, and we are still going into a period of even more changes. However, 2 in 3 people claim that they are not ready for dealing with change in a Deloitte study from last year. So obviously, as a leader, what can we do to support that, or how can we lead our teams and organization through change successfully? Unfortunately, this is obviously a little bit outdated, almost, but less than 1 out of 10 leaders have the right capabilities and experiences required to successfully lead transformations. Also, only 31% of CEOs are fired for not managing organizational change well enough. So there's a lot of leaders who seem to have problems with managing change. And managing change is such an important competency, especially with people in leadership positions. So 32 of leaders in top management positions are actually given feedback that leading change is critical for their success. And I feel like there is still hope, Like it seems as though the major barrier to transformation program is employee resistance. And if we can overcome this, then we can hopefully flip the odds from 70% or 75% chance of failure to a 70% likelihood of success. And companies that invest the time to understand and are a human, and invest in human leaders, help to shift people's mindsets, are 4 times more likely to navigate their change successfully. And I think for those that actually attended the webinar last month, you already know that organizations focusing on the human experience are twice more likely to outperform a competitor, and that is statistic, or that stat is from 2 years ago only. What that all kind of says to me is that we need to take a more human approach if we want our change to have its intended impact and if we want our change to be successful. So how can we successfully lead change? And it's all about really balancing business leadership and human leadership. So we don't want to say that leaders, especially when going through change, don't have to make decisions that are based on profit for the organization. But what we are saying is that there is that good balance that then makes a change initiative successful. You know, 90% of people believe that to succeed in today's work environment, leaders must focus on the human aspects of leadership, but there's still not that many people who actually report their leader as a human leader. So we still really need to focus on that human aspect. And maybe that's then able to, go against that employee resistance that there is at the moment with change initiatives. So change may be the new reality, but it doesn't make it easy to lead. And there are many examples of times that people have got it wrong, where people focused on power and authority instead of individual contributors, anything like that. When we reflect on our own experiences of change, we notice how varied the experiences are and how important it is to actually feel valued, at least for me. And we want to deepen this thinking by exploring what leaders do that really make a difference, and to notice experiences we have had in which we have felt treated as a human rather than a resource to be managed. So what makes a human leader during change? How can we make people feel valued as a human when leading change? So just reflect on that question. Feel free to put any answers in our question box. And also, Dane, when was the last time that you have felt valued as a human being? And do you remember maybe what that person did or what characteristics that person had?
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question, Oriana. As we talk through this, I'll encourage the group to put your ideas and experiences in the question box. But for me, I think it's particularly in a change process, what I felt happened to really make me feel valued was actually just the leader taking the time to explain the reasons and to explain the objectives and to try to, almost like create that sense of purpose as to why we were doing it. To really connect at something deeper than, well, this just has to be done, so get on board. But, to really engage me in the process. And
Mm.
I think you spoke about balance before, the balance between, the business leadership and the human leadership. And I think actually reflecting on that is probably what I'm noticing now is there was that balance of inviting me into the process, but still kind of holding the business parameters around it. So things needed to be done. We needed to change and do things quite differently. That was not going to change. That was the reality of what had to happen. But I think, the leader being able to recognize how much they could involve me in that process was just the right balance to get me to buy in and commit.
Mm. Yeah. I think that's really important. And you're not the only one, actually. We've had loads and loads of people kind of saying similar things.
Yeah, we
Um,
have. We've had some people talk about active listening and empathy. Thank you, Jess. It's that communication. It's so important. What else do we have here? Giving people the opportunity to input and to try and help with individual worries. Yeah, yes, we're really talking about, the human element here. This is great. Are you seeing anything come through, Oriana?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And listening to people show that you care about their thoughts and feelings. Communications on lots of levels. Emails aren't always great. Communication, empathy, inspiration around. Yeah, I love that.
I love Kate as put a comment here. Absolutely, involvement and listening. What we think is trivial is hugely important to somebody else. Yeah,
That's true.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and when a leader has created a sense of we and making it a collaborative process, yeah, and a compassionate, caring one, when all the answers are required, but a sense of caring is paramount. Yeah, that's very similar to what you were saying, Dane, isn't it? Like almost creating like also that transparency of it and that inclusiveness of it.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts and comments. They're still coming through. This is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, we have another one which I love because it's getting to know the person rather than just what they do, and I think that's really human, isn't it? Almost, and it's almost something that we should be doing, but for some reason it seems like we sometimes just forget it in everyday stress, and especially going through changes and transformations, we just keep forgetting that it's actually just a human being.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, sorry. Inspiration around embracing change. Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Vivian. Cool. I think I'm just going to move on just to for time reasons, but please keep, the things, the whatever you have to say coming, your questions as well. I saw Dana's doing a great job actually while I'm talking to answer them.
This is a,
Uh,
a great opportunity for multitasking.
Yeah, and we can see the importance of like active listening, guiding, empowering people, including people as whole human beings. And with hybrid work, working from home, we have, you know, global teams, we have that diminishing separation between work and home life that, I mean, it started well before COVID, but obviously COVID has kind of made it even worse, or well, has not worse, but just has made that separation bigger or stronger. Um, and that also means that leaders need to kind of not only broaden their understanding of how they lead, but also their application of leadership across those blurred lines and kind of embracing a more human world of work, which there might be even an increase in technology, and it's even harder because suddenly you're talking to someone on the other end of the world, and that person is only a screen. So how can you make that interaction more human? And also, how can you support a team that's spread around the world, and you might not necessarily be able, to have one of those water cooler chats, anything like that. So there are a number of new paradigms that can help us to think about the shift that we need to make to kind of lead in a human way. Some are around strengths, some are around bringing yourselves to work, some around being really inclusive. And we will now explore the practices that we can develop as leaders to demonstrate these approaches. Obviously, this is starting with emotional intelligence and then going into human leadership. And also all those previous on the previous slide, all those leadership styles can help you manage change. Emotional intelligence concerns how we understand and manage our own emotions and those of others. So we know that high emotional intelligence is kind of associated with higher levels of performance. It's also associated with higher levels of engagement, personal effectiveness for everyone, and particularly within leaders, emotional intelligence is quite a big thing. So it is important for us to perform well, but how can we, go about in developing emotional intelligence? There are 4 key aspects of emotional intelligence to consider. By Goldman. This is the standard model. It's self-awareness, other awareness, self-management, and relationship management. And those 4 key aspects, obviously, they match up with our human leadership. So they match up with authenticity, inclusivity, role modeling, and human connectors. And human leadership obviously is also there to increase your emotional intelligence. So authenticity is about being able to own your behavior, being vulnerable when admitting your mistakes, being humble about the limits of your knowledge when you're going through change. You're not going to know everything. It's about being, that transparent, inclusive person, which then takes us into inclusivity as well. Increasing awareness of others through curiosity without judgment, acceptance without bias, all of these things. Human leaders are highly aware of others being curious, and how can you encourage that curious inclusivity? How can you create that inclusive environment and encourage and enable others to work with authenticity, even if it is a stressful time for many others due to transformation? And if you think about it, obviously, it's almost like easier to be authentic and then to stay authentic during a stressful or transformation. Just because if you're putting a mask up the whole time and then suddenly you're going through a stressful time as a leader, the mask is more likely to break. And that also then takes us into role modeling. So how to manage ourselves better through remaining open through challenge, amplifying those inclusive behaviors, being those role models. And you can also work on developing your personal resilience to then be able to support others and role model taking ownership of your own well-being during a stressful time. Learning those self-management techniques that underpin great role modeling as the best version of yourself as a leader. And then lastly, we have the human connector aspect. So managing our relationships by creating psychological safety, encouraging confidence, being that human connector. So again, what I said before about when your team is spread out around the world, can I connect the right people to actually be able to support each other during change? how do you form high quality connections and encourage and build confidence, in others? And then, relationships are a big part of or they are a big part of stability within an organization when you are going through change. So having those high quality relationships is really important.
I think it's probably time for another activity. So just a reminder for those who might have joined a little bit later, we're going to use the question box for activities, not the chat function. Your responses will come through directly to Oriana and myself, and we'll read them out to the group. If there's anything that you don't want, would like to remain private, just let us know. And we will keep that offline. But these are the 4 elements of the human leadership model that Ariana just talked us through: authenticity, inclusivity, role modeling, and human connector. What we want to do here is just bring it to life a little bit more for you as a human, as a person. And we have these statements here, numbered 1 through to 4. What I'm really interested in to get feedback from everybody that's joined today is, is there 1 or maybe 2 of these aspects of human leadership that you identify with the most as a leader? Is there 1 or 2 that perhaps really resonate with you, that you feel that you demonstrate very well? That on a day-to-day basis, this is perhaps a strength for you. In the question box, just type in the number: 1 if it's authenticity, 2 if it's inclusivity, 3 if it's role modeling, or 4 if it's human connector. Maybe it's all 4 of them. That would be great. Let's just see what comes back from the group. Of course, these statements are, there's many different statements and lenses and perspectives on each one of these aspects, but we just thought we'll narrow it down to 1 and just use that as a way to ground it. You can see responses flying in. This is great.
I love how every single one of those responses is really different. Well, as in like it's the whole spectrum as well, isn't it? There's no trend towards just one of, like, just authenticity, for example.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of 3s come through, 3s and 4s as well.
1s, yeah, true. No 2 so far.
Oh no,
Maybe
we
a
had
little bit
sort of
of
a
2.
little bit of
Oh,
2,
there we
yeah.
go.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. And somebody has made a comment saying that role modeling here is so important. We know about the concept of leading from the front, and this for me is a differentiator between leadership and management. Thank you, Vivian. Yes, absolutely. Really agree with that. So whilst we don't have an official poll, maybe that's functionality for next time, it certainly looks like the majority of people are voting for 3 and 4. There's a couple of 1s and 2s popping up here and there.
Yeah, I love that. Without looking after your people, your company will be in trouble.
Yeah, thank you, Dawn. Okay, so perhaps this is now a little bit controversial, but if we move on to the next slide, we're going to take this lens and we're going to project it out. And we're going to ask you similar questions, but now really looking at either a team or a broader organizational context. What do you observe? Do you observe any one of these 4 elements of human leadership more frequently than the other? So in the same way that we just did previously, if you can type in the number 1, 2, 3, or 4 into the question box, let's see what our participants are seeing around them in the workplace. Oh, somebody's gone 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's someone I think from my team, so maybe he's being nice. Thank you, Richard. What else are we seeing?
Yeah, we have 3s, 4s. Oh, okay. 2. Interesting.
Fine line between knowledge and arrogance exclusion. And that was a vote for inclusivity. Votes still coming in. Another one for inclusivity.
It's interesting so far, isn't it? Because in the individual poll, it was almost like people are voting more for 3 and 4. Here we're now even getting the 2s that we didn't get before at all. So it's good to see that it seems like organizations are really working towards being inclusive.
Yes, it definitely has been a big focus for many organizations lately. Inclusivity, authenticity, well-being, these have been really important. It's interesting that I think the majority of our votes on the previous slide were probably more of that. It's almost that external focus, role modeling, and the human connector. Authenticity and our view on inclusivity, including others without judgment. These are almost like that internal things first that we have to some degree. Maybe it's easier to be more aware of the behaviors that we have with others and others around us because we see it. But taking a moment to reflect on ourselves and to think, how am I showing up, or what strengths am I using today, or when was the last time I was, fully engrossed in what I was doing, or, I was bringing somebody else into a conversation or a decision that I hadn't before. Maybe we don't necessarily observe those perspectives as much because sometimes they're more internal than external. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's true. Yeah. It's really interesting, and I would say that if you felt like you had your focus on something, on completely different aspects of the poll, but your organization has, so you had your focus on role modeling, but your organization has it on inclusivity. How can you bring more role modeling into your organization, and also how can you learn from your organization to bring more inclusivity into your everyday leading style? Those could be things that you could be setting yourselves as, for example, key takeaways from today's session to be more of that human leader, to be more successful in leading through changes. Obviously, it's also interesting to see if you were to have chosen the same ones. So are you really good at role modeling? Is that kind of what you feel like is speaking to you the most? And is your organization really good at that too? Or your team? And then how can you work together to bring in authenticity, inclusivity, and human connector within yourself and the team and organization?
Thanks everybody for your votes. That's been really interesting. I think that's sparked some very interesting comments. And somebody is we're getting comments through now as well about their takeaways, to improve their role modeling. It's just these 4 kind of models, these anchor points here to really focus on, a really holistic view of human leadership. It's very powerful, and when we
Yeah.
kind of look at us and look at the organization and the team around us, I think it's you can gain a lot from something which is fairly straightforward, but so important and so powerful. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and make it concrete. Like how can obviously just do that for yourself? How can you do that in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Where is your chance to improve your role modeling, for example? Set yourself smart goals, even worse. Obviously, you don't have to do that now, but just in general, to really hold yourself accountable to put learning into practice.
So it really is about that balance, the balance of the business leadership, the objectives, the actions, and the human leadership element of it. We're seeing that shift from, I guess, the human capital management to a human experience, and therefore, we need more of that human leadership style. We need that among people, and when we see that, we see less burnout, greater resilience, less absenteeism, lower staff turnover. We see it in teams, higher individual and team engagement, higher productivity. And we see it across organizations that function faster, they're more agile, there's more continuous learning, faster decision making, and creative problem solving, which just leads to greater organizational agility and performance. And it's really a shift from survive to thrive, and it depends on an organization and a team becoming and remaining distinctly human at its core. And it's not just a different way of thinking and acting, but it's a different way of being. And that's a quote from Deloitte, and I think it's really, really important. It really speaks to the heart of what we're talking about here. And you can see that there's a positive impact of human leadership, an increase in engagement, team performance, profitability, less turnover, less absenteeism. So this has real business impact. I think we also see that when we focus on human leadership, it also improves employee well-being and performance. And organizations that can focus on a human experience are ultimately twice as likely to outperform their competitors. And we see that through research from Gartner just last year, and McKinsey as well. So there's real focus here on this, and there's real importance, and we have the data and the evidence that backs it up. And I think if we just take a moment to circle back to the question at the beginning of the webinar, it's about how can we avoid feeling lost in change. It can be overwhelming. It's relentless. It just marches forward. But by focusing on the elements of human leadership and using them through change, it enables and empowers us to build more resilient, connected, and purpose-driven teams and organizations. And so as you wrap up today, there are loads of resources available to help you remain focused on human leadership and to explore the concept further. So I encourage you to follow our team on LinkedIn, to visit our website at baileyandfrench.com. And we have a resources hub that's continuously updated with new webinars and information. It's all free and accessible for you. I think it's really important to share this as widely as we can to make the greatest positive impact. You can see some of our personal favorites resources, some books here as well. And of course, if you want to find out more, please do reach out and contact us.